and you find a group of people to blame, you kind of shit on them, and then you kind of build a community around that with a bunch of basically angry, disaffected people that are all like looking for some party to blame, and you kind of build a community around that. Hey, what's up?
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm just checking if my connection is right. Just let me know if I'm roboting or anything like that, because that would be kind of. Am I?
No, you're
I've
fine.
been
You
having
know,
some
you sound fine right
connection.
now. Yeah, I'll let you know if it happens, but everything sounds fine right now.
I should ask you from the start. Do you mind if I record this conversation and upload it to my second channel?
Oh no, go for it. And I'm streaming too, so sorry, I don't know if I said that or not. Yeah, so
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
go
Okay.
for it.
Well. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. How have you been doing? Like, I think we haven't talked in like 2 years for like since last week.
I've been doing great. I've been doing the same thing I've done for the past 11 years, just streaming and memeing. But yeah, how about you?
Yeah,
You were doing politics. You've had like quite the journey over the past couple of years, I think, right? Like, I think you were in a certain community, and then you've gotten doxxed or something, and now you're kind of like bouncing around, or what's up?
Oh, I really don't know how to start, but yeah, I guess you could say that I kind of gave up on putting my opinion out there. Or at least that's something that I concluded that I should do after a while. That uh, basically what I'm trying to do right now on my channel is to just, from a neutral perspective, present the kind of social, historic, and economic facts that form the basis from which I form my political opinions without actually giving my political opinion. It's a break from the content that I used to make, which was just my opinions,
Sure.
fact with opinions. And I think that for the time being, at the very least, or at least that's what I conclude in conversation with friends,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a good idea to just try to be objective. I'm fully aware that like a full objectivity is not possible when presenting facts, but one can at least try. And I know there's some downsides to it. There's people who can come in and watch my videos and then, interpret them completely differently. But it's just something that I concluded would be a good idea to do. So, yeah, that's what I'm basically doing for now. Who knows? Maybe in the future I'll put my opinions out there again. But yeah. You're streaming on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Still doing the same debates that you did 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Forever?
Kind of. I
Kind of.
when the Democratic primary picked up, I've been fighting more with like socialists and communists lately. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I pretty much the same thing I've always
Yeah,
been
I
doing.
heard rumors that you were doing that. I heard rumors that you were, but I usually only listen to stream. I don't watch streams. I listen to streams when I'm working, just to have something in my ear.
Yeah.
But
Well, what exactly do you want to talk about today? Would you message me for, I guess?
that's the thing. I used to be part of something that was called the skeptic community, I guess.
Yeah.
The skeptosphere, called it, until it kind of imploded.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much around my drama, if we're being honest. And well, things have gone pretty weird ever since. The people who I used to associate with quite a bit, like Sargon and Co, have gone really, really off far right.
Yeah.
And
Wait,
there's another
Sargon and
group
who?
wow, there's a long list of these people.
Or wait, did you say Sargon and Kirk?
No, I didn't say Kirk. I
Oh,
said
okay.
Sargon and Co. I
Oh,
should have
okay.
probably.
Sorry, because I thought Kirk was is that the Amazing Atheist guy?
No, I haven't talked to that guy in
Uh,
4 years,
okay,
maybe.
gotcha. I don't remember his name. Okay, I was making sure I didn't hear you right. Okay, Sargon of Akkad. Okay, yeah, Sargon
Yeah,
of Akkad always
there's
was pretty
a group
questionable in
far
the way
right.
that he interpreted things. Yeah.
There's the other group of people who are now who used to be in the skeptosphere, who are trying to cuddle up to like left wing YouTube, far left YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because around my little channel, or at least in my Discord server, what started happening is that I've kind of started assembling this kind of clique or group of people. It's very small. What they all basically have in common is they're all people who used to be subscribed to Sargon, watched him a lot, but are also completely disillusioned with him. Like, have absolutely have caught on more or less to the kind of bullshit and all that.
Sure.
But who also don't want to join the far left, as some other YouTubers who used to be in the skeptic sphere are trying to do that. And what I've been doing with them over the course of a month now, I guess, is basically discussing that, like who we are, our views, and an essential part of that has been, and that's something that I started doing 2 weeks ago, is conversations which I record and then upload to my second channel, where we talk about, I call it autopsies, where we basically look at the content created over the course of the last 5 years from that community that I was part of. We kind of try to analyze, okay, what did we do wrong? What were our mistakes? What could we have done better? Etc., etc. Should we maybe try to learn lessons out of this for the future if we build something new? Should we even build something new? Should we even rebuild anything? Or should we just let it go and all go our separate paths? It's like it's a multitude of conversations that are basically taking place in that circle around all that. And I was wondering, or at least a friend of mine who I believe you may know, because I think he streamed with you, LSP, believe that you might have some interesting input on that, especially considering that you were, for a very long time, I believe, at odds with many of the people who I used to associate with.
What is the wait? What was the friend? Did you?
LSP, Liberal Sanity Project.
Oh, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've talked to that guy a few times. I don't know. Fuck, I don't really have much input here. It seems like that fundamentally there's like people approach these things in different ways. I understand that some of these things I'm going to say are kind of like loaded with value, like whether it's good or bad. I don't think any of these things are necessarily good or bad. I'm just kind of describing them in a detached manner. So like some people, when it comes to politics, are not quite as interested in building like effective like policy proposals or building an effective understanding of like of any particular like political ideology or political atmosphere, I guess. Like they're not, their goal is to understand what's going on or, you know, what we should do, whatever. Some people are just looking for kind of communities to be a part of. And I think for a lot of people related to like the skeptosphere or now like the socialist or commie sphere or the alt-right sphere, like a lot of these people, they're not like, oh, I wish I could figure out like what's the most effective political way to remedy XYZ problem. Generally, they just want like a group of people that they feel like they belong with, that they can go into a Discord with and chat with and hang out with. I'm not interested in that at all. I don't try to build a community around a certain political ideology.
I know people in my group who have a far more cynical belief. They believe that most of the people don't actually believe in anything, but are merely just spouting opinions out that seem to get clicks at the moment and seem to get views and Patreon dollars.
I don't know about the people at the top, if they believe that or not. So I think that the action is true, that maybe people say things that they haven't certainly thought through or really believe super hardcore, but I don't think the intention is malicious. I think that like people rightfully, we're very good at humans when understanding when something's not right, but we're not very good at figuring out what exactly isn't right and how to fix it. So like when you take a lot of people that are just upset about something, it's easy to like find a band-aid like, oh, it's the billionaires, oh, it's capitalists, oh, it's Jews, oh, it's black people. And you find a group of people to blame, you kind of shit on them, and then you kind of build a community around that with a bunch of basically angry, disaffected people that are all like looking for some party to blame, and you kind of build a community around that. Socialists or lefties do it with capitalists or wealthy people. Alt-righters do it with Jews or minorities. Anti-SJWs did it with the blue-haired screeching feminists, like, and that's really like the extent of their political sophistication, I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
You can see that in like content that was being made, that everyone basically tried to constantly repeat Gamergate over and over again.
Yeah, I think that's why the gamer
thing that
go ahead.
And then everyone wanted that was the one thing that basically brought all of these people together, or all of them together, was Gamergate. After that, instead of trying to move on from that and trying to go into other political topics, etc., or into real political issues, because I have to also acknowledge at this point now that the entire anti-SJW thing was just a major distraction, something that is completely irrelevant in real life, something with no basis or foundation anywhere in real politics. And instead of trying to go into addressing actual political issues and social issues of our time, they went down the road in trying to endlessly try to summon up the ghost of Gamergate again. Let's have Gamergate 2.0, 3.0, whatever.
I think Sargon literally said that verbatim, I think, where he said we need to have a Gamergate 2.0 or something. But yeah, I mean, that's basically like, I think when you define yourself as screaming at some opposition, oftentimes an imagined opposition, like that type of rage can only last so long. Yep. There are only so many purple-haired, huge women that that you can make videos of them screeching about, that you can scream at for so long before people are like, okay.
It's not the purple-haired ones. Did you know who Riley J. Dennis is?
I think so. Riley... Yeah, I feel like I've seen her Twitter a ton.
It's not really that relevant for the conversation, but it's just in the weeks leading up to the conversation that we two are having right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with this person. Yeah, I haven't seen anything by her in a long time, but yeah. What about it?
We looked at past content, me and my friends, etc., and we noticed something kind of ridiculous, to be honest, which is there are about. I think a friend of mine counted them. There are around 430 response videos and response streams to that one person, Riley J. Dennis. And what is funny to me is that all of them say nothing. They have absolutely no substance in it. Most of them, at least. There's no argumentations being made. It's usually just screeching and shouting.
Yep.
The other interesting thing to me, when I looked at her channel, I found that she is just one smaller channel in a larger community of not what one might call SJW YouTube, but simply gay and lesbian and trans YouTube. A larger community of which there were channels even back then that had like 200,000 and 300,000 subscribers, yet people picked that one channel because it was basically an easy picking.
Yeah.
And we discussed that at length in our conversations, and the conclusions that I came to in the end was, I believe that the response video format itself is something that dooms people or dooms a community, that it's something that over time just becomes boring. And it's also something that is inherently, it invites in a nastiness.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you approach doing response videos, of course, right? Like, response videos could lend themselves to highly productive conversations. Maybe you analyze another person's video, you break apart the argument specifically how they're wrong, and then maybe generally how they're wrong, and you could do it like that. But generally, response videos try to dunk on strawman, things the other person didn't say, at best, and then at worst, they devolve into horrible ad homs that are just attacking the person's credibility or character.
That's exactly it. That's actually one of the things that I believe. I believe that when it comes down to what was once called the skeptic community, I think that it is the response video format that destroyed it. Some of my friends disagree with me on that.
Yeah, I don't think the response video, I don't think that destroyed it. I think that response videos can blend themselves to either positive or negative feedback. It just depends on how they're done. Like, as much as I hate him and disagree with almost every fucking thing this dumb fuck has said over the past 6 months, Sean and Jen, the Sean guy, his response videos to Sargon of Akkad, generally very good, very well researched, usually devoid of any ad homs, picks apart what's being said, and then presents like contradictory information in a highly informative and relatively dispassionate manner. I think that like response videos like that are a pretty good way of dismantling like misinformation from the opposition. Now, when people make response videos to me and they call me a pedophile and they don't really what?
Yeah, that's exactly what you bring up. When people make response videos, they call you a pedophile, etc., etc. Response videos there isn't a high bar. There isn't a high standard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like you are currently bringing the standard of content. Like, okay, do a detailed, researched, well-articulated video. You know, that standard, that does not exist. And when you rely on the response video format as much as the community that I was part of did, it's an incredibly low bar to set, and you get people swarming in who just make videos where they just ramble and rant and this person is a cunt and arsehole, blah 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 blah.
Hey buddy, just, I've been subscribed through Twitch for a few months, but I am tired of
because there isn't really much substance to it because there's no bar there, no standard.
Yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately, like, this is kind of like an unfortunate reality of online stuff, is that, like, rage politics and, like, that type of that style of content where you're just like basically attacking people and playing to ideologues, that's always going to be more popular than any more informed content. Like the loudest voices are typically like if I do like a stream where I spend like 10 hours like researching stuff related to immigration and shit, maybe I get like 3,000 or 4,000 viewers. If I do a stream where I'm screaming at like a bunch of alt-righters or whatever, I can get like 10,000 plus viewers, right? Like it's just more entertaining to watch people scream at each other, to kind of circle jerk like who's right and who's better in an argument, and then like what community's cooler, rather than like putting in any real work into doing research on arguments and stuff. Like people are that's just the kind of thing that people are drawn to.
The reason I disagree with you is I believe it's just a small section of the internet who are drawn to watching people scream at each other. I believe there's a far larger section of internet users who are far more interested in watching or listening to informative videos. The reason I say that is because, well, out of my experience, the videos that I've been making for like half a year perform enormously better than the ones that I made before. The objective presentations of, the economic history of Turkey, etc., etc. These perform better. They sound boring in the titles and when I just describe it like that, but people, when they search for information on something that they want to understand better, they tend to end up there. And if you go on YouTube and you look up political videos in general, you will find that people who talk about economics, who talk about geopolitics, tend to perform better than those who talk about the boring, needlessly tiresome, nonsense culture war stuff. We talk about
well, maybe the culture war stuff for now, but I think that like what gets most clicks today are usually the people that are just screaming the loudest. Like it might be true that for your channel, maybe doing particularly well researched historical fact-based stuff.
I'm not just talking about. I'm talking about channels like Caspian Report, for example. I don't know if you're aware of him.
I've heard the channel.
He makes videos on geo. Yeah, there's many channels like that perform enormously better than any kind of people raging against the SJWs would.
Well, but like, look at like, doesn't Steven Crowder have like 2 million subs? I'm sorry, Steven Crowder has over 4 million subs, and this guy literally his whole channel is like almost everything he talks about he's incredibly ill-informed about. Like he is like very inflammatory. Like there's not really any good political content here whatsoever. And this guy's like one of the loudest political voices on YouTube right now. And then I'm sure there's like a handful of other.
I forgot about that.
What?
I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot about that guy because I don't really watch him.
Oh sure.
Yeah. So his channel is like performing well as well, like millions of subscribers, I guess.
Yeah, over 4 million subs. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like
I remember
if I just look at like the mainstream media landscape, like even outside of YouTube, it seems like people are generally drawn towards like less. I don't know, like fact-based stuff is just really boring. Most people just want their opinions to be reaffirmed, and they want somebody to do it in an entertaining fashion. That seems to be what most people are drawn to.
That's exactly a point as well, which is the grift thing. You know, the accusation of grifting. Yeah, the negative part of that, the fact that that a lot of people in the community that I was in became these grifters, that they basically told people what they already believed in hopes of getting money in exchange. And one of the conclusions that we came to when we discussed this is that for the future, if I make opinion videos in which I distinctively state my own opinion on something, that maybe a great trick out of it would be to not monetize it, to not post it on Patreon, to not ask for donations, to not put ads on it, and that for any kind of future political community to arise out of the ashes of that sphere, it might be a good idea to kill the grift by not monetizing opinions.
Well, but I mean, other people are always going to want to do that, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. Well, the thing is also that we can't really set the one thing that really chews on me a little bit is that it used to be that we thought that there were certain values and certain things that we had to do, that we had to enforce on each other in a group, instead of thinking of our behaviors in terms of ourselves. Like, what can we expect from ourselves? What should we, demand from ourselves to do? So I wouldn't go to other YouTubers in like some group that might form around me and tell them, do not monetize your opinion pieces. But it would be something that I would say, okay, I do this. it's kind of like to bring up something that is unrelated. I, for example, never endorsed a political candidate in any election on my channel because I just don't feel comfortable telling people who they should vote for. I just don't.
Yeah, but this is
it's
just
not
like
something that I hold.
I understand the ideal, and like
myself.
I can respect the ideal, but it's just like when Saudi Arabia says, you know, hey everybody, like let's all like not produce oil for a little bit to drive up prices. Like everybody nods their heads, and then as soon as Saudi cuts their production, everybody else just like hams it up even more to take advantage of the vacuum. Like I don't think that you can make YouTubers adhere to any type of political standard like that. As soon as they see an opening,
I don't think so either. Yeah. I've completely given up on any such idea.
Yeah, because you can hold yourself. Like I like to think that I hold myself to certain standards, but there's no fucking way that's going to be reciprocated.
That's the thing, holding yourself to standards. That's the thing.
Yeah, but there's no advantage to doing so. It's just a personal, like if you've got like a personal principle that you like to stand on, then you can do that.
Maybe there's a financial one, but there certainly is one in terms of the standard itself, like what people expect from you. I think that if you're capable of holding yourself to a certain standard, if you're capable of holding yourself to account instead of others, then people in general will tend to respect that.
Yeah, a minority of people, and the majority of people will just flock to the people that do the screaming and the shouting and then go and scream and shout with them. It's just the way of, it's just the political landscape of the world.
Let them go.
Yeah, of course, that's not a problem, but that's like my original argument, is that more people are always going to be drawn to that type of content.
Are you doing what you're doing to, you know, gather a massive, enormous audience of people? What is more important to you, the popularity or yourself?
I do it because I enjoy like the research, and I enjoy like having what I feel is like the most correct position, and then I like arguing that position with other people. That's my goal. My goal is never to like have the most fans or whatever, or be the most like bombastic to get like the most followers. Like there are other people that are doing that now.
I enjoy the editing, and I enjoy talking to people after I publish my video on my server and all that stuff. But I do, how do I put that? I recently watched, like, for the first time in like half a year, watched a Sargon video, and it was just him with this weird, crazy woman rambling on about how trans people are supposedly just all castrated men, and it is this kind of childish thing, you know, this childish, nasty, belittling attitude and behavior that is displayed there, that I can imagine brings clicks and views to his channel, but it is something that I would consider to be beneath me and something that I would not do.
Sure.
You understand what I'm trying to get at? That kind of standard.
Yeah, you can have those standards. You can always have those. I think that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I consider myself to have those standards, but it's a matter of like whether or not that type of standard is going to get you more popularity than the other people, which is, the answer seems to be no. Like, yeah. I don't think the loudest voices in the political landscape in the United States, the loudest voices and the messages that carry the farthest are very rarely the most economically or politically or like even scientifically informed ones. Usually it's just the most like shocking ones, the most bombastic ones, the ones that play to a base the most.
Yeah, no. I know. I think you remember the Bush era just as much as me. The creationism debate and all that. It's really ridiculous on occasion. But isn't it kind of inviting to take the challenge to also just take a stand against all that? When you have like this, just to give an example, I'm going to be working on a video in the near future where I talk about the relationship between Mexico and the United States. And I'm just going to present the fact in that video, which is just a fact, and I've researched that pretty well at this point, that the wall is a lie. Trump's wall is a lie. You can't wall off the border between the United States and Mexico because it's literally a logistical impossibility. That border is twice the size of the Iron Curtain, the border between the Communist Bloc and the Western Bloc during the Cold War. And, you know, controlling that border almost bankrupted the Eastern Bloc. And just the logistics of building a wall, patrolling a wall, building guard towers, all that stuff, it's just financially and logistically not feasible to do. And that's just an objective fact to present. That's a truth. That's something that you can't just talk around. The wall is a lie. It cannot be feasibly done.
Sure.
And I know for a fact that presenting that will get me a lot of nasty attitudes from all the people who are like, yeah, the wall, build the wall, blah, 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 blah. But to be honest with you, the fact that I will get that kind of reaction from presenting that kind of encourages me to go ahead with it anyway. To me, these kinds of things are more of an encouragement to see, okay, standing against the waves of popularity, against populism itself. I see that as more inviting.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how you see yourself and that's like a driving thing for you, then yeah, I mean then by all means, like, do that.
Kind of that as a sort of standard, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that. Yeah, of course. But like, so I guess like the difference is that like I think I do that to some extent, but it's not really my goal. It's just more kind of like a side effect of what I do anyway. Like what drives me is I just like to feel like I research positions and I have good points on them. Oftentimes that means I might stand contrary to like some of the leading rhetoric coming out of some political groups, but that's not like my goal. I'm not like driven to like, oh, like I am challenging like. What? Yeah, that's just something that happens. Now, not to say that that can't be like a bad goal. Like if that is your goal, that's fine. You can do that. That's just not. I guess like I understand how some people might think that's what I set out to do, but that's not really what I set out to do. It just kind of happens as a result of my current process, I guess. It's not like my goal to take a stand against a lot of people or whatever.
Well, you were never really part of any kind of creator community, were you?
Nope, and I'm still not. Because like I said before, most of those people are less concerned with building like decently researched, well-informed opinions, and they're more concerned with like building a community of people that agree with everything and like are part of a group. Because a lot of people like to be parts of groups because you feel more powerful, you feel more reaffirmed, you feel better. Like it's just nice to be part of a group. But I've never really been concerned.
You feel more secure. You feel more secure. That is the thing. You feel a lot more secure.
Yeah, sure.
But it's also something that we brought up is. There are also weaknesses, because a bottom line is that if you're part of a content creator community, is that the weaknesses of the content creators you associate with also become your weaknesses. Yeah, especially if you are defending them. Mm-hmm. There's an example out of my story on YouTube. You might remember some of the stuff that happened 2 years ago. I was secretly recorded saying what I actually think of certain content creators within my community, who I had associated. And one in particular where I said that I found his content to be absolutely rubbish and nonsense and complete waste of time. Something that I would have never publicly said, but it was secretly recorded and made published. And that kind of shows how communities can become weaknesses. Because I didn't like that person's content. I thought it was horrible content.
Sure, I mean, it just depends on... Yeah, I mean, this is why I don't have, like, political friends. Because people generally can't handle criticism of their content, yeah.
And I was tied to that person. I was tied into having to defend that person because it was part of that person's community.
Yeah, that's part of the pros and cons of being in a community, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That lends itself more to the argument that there's nothing that should even be rebuilt, which is kind of like one of the conversations that we're having, that maybe we shouldn't have a rebirth of any kind of community.
Well, I mean, it really depends. It depends on what your goal is. Like, if your goal is to build a community of people that are friends, that support each other, that like share arguments and trade stuff, and have like that community-driven kind of like
well, that kind of already exists, like in my small Discord server. But for the time being, I'm mainly trying to make really good videos.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. You should like figure out like what is your goal at the end of the day. Like, what are you really trying to accomplish, and then you kind of move towards that goal, right?
Well, the other thing is just mainly a sideshow. I think that if there is to be a community in general, a new one, it shouldn't be the main thing. Like, the content creators should, like, that's something that happened with the Skeptosphere, because it became this thing that anyone could join, because there was such a low bar of entry. But all you really needed to do was be able to record yourself rambling on about some, as you put it, blue-haired YouTuber, bedroom feminist, or whatever you want to call it. It became its own YouTube genre where you didn't have to bring anything in yourself. You didn't have to be educated in anything. You didn't have to have any expertise in anything. You could just come in and ramble. You didn't have to actually present anything. So that's communities, if existent at all, are best when they're only a secondary thing and not the primary thing. The primary thing through which to make content.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell like how much you're saying descriptively versus prescriptively. I can't tell how much you'd want something to be a way versus how much something is a way. Like, it is the fact that communities become like the most important part of most YouTubers, such that they will rebel even sometimes against them depending on what's going on. Like, for instance, like ContraPoints had a big community, and then things happened that caused a split or a schism in her community related to trans issues. And like, yeah, I don't know. I guess the question is, like, at the end of the day, you just have to figure out like what you want to do. Like, how you view communities is irrelevant. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to build a community, or do you just want to make content? And then if a community forms, that's fine. If a community does form, do you want to be very hands-on and like kind of like figuring out what you want them to talk about, or?
That's the thing. I'm just for now just making my content, but there are certainly people, mostly like these disillusioned Sargon fans, who wish to have some kind of new, the kind of people who called themselves classical liberal 2 years ago, who I guess to a certain extent wish to have a kind of revival of it. And I do have to admit that I kind of miss being in a community.
Sure. Yeah, there's literally nothing wrong with that. It's super common. We're social creatures. Yeah. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. But the questions that revolve around the conversation that we are having right now, some of the questions that I brought up to you, like what mistakes were made, what went wrong in the first place, should we even do that at all? Should we even encourage other people to make content similar to ours, or should we just encourage that? Should we? And the word "we" itself is in question.
Mm-hmm.
If we should even take a group of people of which to think as a collective. Like, yeah, I came out of what happened to me with a considerable amount of paranoia, where I'm very suspicious of most content creators in general.
Yeah, I think you always should be. I think most people will throw each other under the bus if they have the opportunity to do so, sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something that I had to learn the hard way. And that in itself also plays a role with that. I don't want to be part of some future drama circus again.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely zero in that at all whatsoever. But yeah, I should have brought the list of questions that I had from people on my server, but I don't have them here right now. So I guess I'll have to try to continue this conversation myself.
Yeah, sure. Or message me at some in a few days or whatever if you have the list or whatever. We can chat again if you want.
Yeah, sure. Is there any other input that you would like to give on that?
No, I mean, I think that the most important thing you can do is figure out, like, what do you want to do? Like, what end goal do you have in mind? And then once you've, like, clearly established that.
There is one question that I wanted to ask you because, as you know, I don't watch your streams, at least. I don't know how to watch old Twitch streams. If I could, then I would maybe watch them. Mm-hmm. But I'm too much of a boomer for that. So you've been going after left-wing YouTubers again?
Not going after. It's just like as a result of the Democratic primaries, I'm having to see more stupid shit said by very far left-leaning people, and I'm going, what?
That's very interesting to me because I always, I remembered you as more of the type of guy who always made the left-wing argument or sided with the left-wingers. At least that is how you were portrayed.
Well, yeah, but like I'm very far left compared to the average person, but I'm not a socialist or a communist. So people that are socialists or communists perceive me as being very far right because they're brain dead. So that's been like a lot of
time.
How
did it come to be that you came to be at odds with them publicly?
How? What? I'm sorry. Say the beginning of that again.
How did it come to be that you came to be at odds with them publicly?
Just because there are basically, like, I apply the same thought process that I use when attacking alt-righters to socialists or communists, and I start finding out that they make a lot of very similar arguments, and they have a lot of very similar thought processes, and then I've had some pretty big public falling outs with some other kind of like socialist content creators that kind of like alt-righters hide their power level very hardcore, that pretend that they're liberals.
That's a very funny thing that you bring to that. That's a really funny thing that you bring.
Yeah.
Because half a year ago, I was invited into a server about one of these, I don't know what it's called now, bread tube, left tube or something.
Mm-hmm.
I was invited into their server and to have conversations with them, etc., etc. And I noticed that when I was in their server that I recognized a shit ton of people from back when I made videos against the alt-right 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, who just completely rebranded themselves and just went, look, I'm a communist now. But the behavior in general has not really changed that much. It was a pretty funny incident to see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I should have probably brought in with the questions. Is there anything else you would like to add? Other than that?
No, I mean, I think if you have any questions, you can always let me know. But figuring out long term what you want things to look like. It sounds like a dumb point, but a lot of people don't do it. They figure it out as they go.
No, I just know what I already know what content I'm going to make for the next.
Yeah, but your questions aren't really around your content. Your questions are, what do you want like a community to look like afterwards? I think it's good to figure out exactly how you want to.
It's not really. It's not even if I want it to look like. It's if it should even be.
Sure.
Like, if it should even be, because I had this very interesting thing a few months ago where I started watching some left-wing YouTubers again for the first time in 2 years, because ever since I stopped, doing the response videos and all that, there was no need for me to watch them. And I found myself not listening to what they said. Instead I just really frantically observed how they interacted with each other, how they talked with each other, what they said about other people. Like, I found myself trying to figure out behavior patterns that may have been similar to the people who I used to associate with. I was trying to figure out who was the Sargon of BreadTube and that kind of stuff, almost subconsciously without even noticing it that much. So, yeah, to me, there's a lot of paranoia about communities. There's a lot of distrust. There's the part that I miss them, but there's also they tend to not go that. It's a lot of conversations going on in my circle, and we both of us believe that you, as someone who was pretty frequently actually kind of seen as an antagonist, if we're being honest, I thought that you might have some really interesting takes to give, or at least some very good analysis of it all, since you've been involved with us, I guess, for like 4 years now. I believe you were one of the prime people making responses to Sargon.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, hey, if you ever come
up... How do you see his...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, how do you see his descent, by the way?
Because Sargon something that is just somebody that's very ideologically driven. I've always seen him as just a very stupid person. He's not very interesting for me to analyze. I think he's gone like full like alt-right at this point, or if not, he's like flirting with it heavily from some of the stuff that I saw about him several months ago. But Sargon is always just, I think he just kind of follows his emotions, and then he lets him take it.
That's something that we might disagree at some point, because I actually firmly believe that he wasn't always like that.
I mean, his conclusions might not have always been like that, but his thought process has always been bad. His inability to read charts and graphs, his inability to have good reading comprehension, and to even take away like meaningful conclusions from studies, like his cherry picking of data, his very selective reading of things that probably disagree with him, but he picks out like I just don't.
The hate facts.
The hate what?
The inherent stupidity of the hate facts. The where you look up some random crime statistic and you throw up. For the fact that you put in your video, I don't know, I have to pick a random one. I'm just going to make something up right now. That there's a disproportionately high amount of rape crimes committed by population group A, right? And you take that fact, you call it the hate fact, and you throw it out, and you say that it's politically incorrect to say that. And that's something that he started doing frequently. He does these events now where he presents nothing but hate facts, just lists them on. Percentage of population in population group A commits this crime, da 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 da, and he rattles these data points down. But the problem with this format is, it's just an open invite to stupidity.
Yeah, of course.
Like I used to do it frequently. I pointed out in my videos that there's a disproportionately high amount of sexual violence committed by immigrants from Arab countries, but just throw out these numbers without explaining why this is, without giving the wider context of how this came to be. Because I can just as well point out, this is also something which is quite factual, actually. amongst Russian immigrants in Europe, there's a disproportionately high amount of domestic violence, wife beating,
with you, Twitch,
kids. And if you just throw that out there without mentioning that the domestic violence rate in Russia is pretty high because it is encouraged in Russia, because there is no legal protection for women, etc., etc., you just get this soup of nonsense where anyone can come in and say, okay, this is because Russians are inherently supposedly driven to beat their wives. And this is kind of, this is also an aspect of something that clearly went wrong over the last 4 years in the sphere that I was in. The completely constant rattling down of these hate facts without adding any nuance to the conversation, without explaining anything. Just saying, oh, this is politically correct, therefore I shall say it, and try to elicit a reaction, and thereby pretend that you have been confirmed because there is a negative reaction to it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll try to gather together a list from my friends from things to bring up. They've warned me, by the way, some of them, to not talk to you.
Yeah, people think I'd turn people into Nazis or some shit, or trick people into saying dumb shit when they've said dumb shit on their own.
Like from the conversations that we had 2 years ago, you're definitely not the nasty person that a lot of people want to paint you to be.
Thanks, I try not to be.
Well, yeah.
All right, well, okay. Have a good one. Let me know when you get those questions, and then just feel free to message me. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for the recording and everything else. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Have a good one, man.
I'm glad you came in. This was
me too. I'm really glad. That's really good.
You don't get to say
maker,
shit, Steven. You don't get to say shit.
Disagree with everything I said.